what can we do about it? So we started doing research. We started looking through articles, reading as many resources as we can. But every resource that we found ultimately raised more questions than it answered. We drafted a power map of stakeholders in the beginning, and that grew exponentially and got more complicated. And so we thought, okay, research isn't enough. We're going to have to do more to try to wrap our heads around this issue.
So we conducted community meetings, and we met with policymakers and other community members and internet providers. And so we've got a great list of who all we met with. Thank you to everybody who met with us. And some of you I know are here, and we're so thankful for your information and your input. As David mentioned, it is such a complex problem. So many issues. It affects this area, and there's something in between that's separating them two, and so they can't connect. It's complicated. That was one of our original titles. One cool thing that we learned from our project was just being how accessible people are. The policymakers and we met with city council members. It was really easy to contact them. We emailed them and we said, hey, we're doing this cool project. We have some questions for you. Do you want to meet with us? And they responded, and they wanted to meet with us. And so that was a really neat thing, that even though it was a really complicated problem and we don't have a specific solution, people were willing to meet with us, and they were easy and accessible to meet with. And so through our meetings, we came up with some outcomes that we were able to get done within our time span. And so Gus and Lizzie and Caitlin are going to talk about those.
So one of our original goals going into the project was to be able to increase awareness among elected officials in Minneapolis, both about the importance of broadband access in the city, but also about some of the inequities in terms of who has coverage and who has to pay certain prices for their coverage. However, over the course of all our research interviews, we realized it's a much more complex issue than we usually thought. So we realized it would take a lot more time to kind of come to an idea of like what kind of are the ideal solutions for this problem. Of course, we have all these different stakeholders, private companies, the city of Minneapolis, residents of the city, all have different demands in terms of what they want to see happen. So we thought it was very complex, also a very interesting question, which we're also going to be continuing probably for the coming year in terms of what we're working on. However, we were able to get a little bit involved in the process of Minneapolis' draft comprehensive plan for 2040, and which allows residents of Minneapolis to submit comments kind of about what they, about the ideas the city is having for long-term planning. So we were able to submit kind of a compilation of some of what we got out of our interviews and our research over the course of the summer.
Another thing we were working on all year was just researching the problem. It's so big, there's so much information. It took almost like the first 3 or 4 months just to wrap our heads around the issue. And we were hoping that in the future people could continue this project and keep learning more and keep making action, but we didn't want them to have to go through all the steps we did of just wrapping our heads around the problem. So one outcome is we worked on a really detailed annotated bibliography of all the resources we put together, all the contacts we have, and so that the next group, hopefully it's going to be CTEP members next year, won't have to go through the original process of just figuring out what is going on.
And furthermore, we made our own resource, which is a short documentary about internet access. We were excited to share what we learned. So our documentary, Filling in the Gaps, outlines the problem as we understand it, as well as some potential visions for the future. And we hope that this sort of demonstrates what we're trying to do with this project, which is build awareness about an issue and teach relevance. We know that that's a big part of just understanding this issue, is why do we care? Furthermore, there's a lot to keep talking about, and as we've mentioned, hopefully, I know there's future CTEPs in the audience, this inspires you to keep talking, educating others, talk to your neighbors, inquire, see if there are differences, and yes, we also are hoping to have another gathering in the fall, likely here at SPNN, so hopefully the conversation does not stop here.
Telecommunications, the broadband infrastructure has has come to be seen as an essential service.
So imagine the implications of that if one part of the city or one part of the state has a different level of delivery and quality than another part. You know, we're talking about fundamental civil rights.
I use the internet every day.
All schoolwork is basically online. My school still uses textbooks, but then most of the textbooks that we use are online now.
So I understand how important digital equity and just equity of information is to everybody thriving.
While most people do have internet access at home, we do see disparities along racial lines.
I live in North Minneapolis. You know, taking myself as an example, I'm already paying what comparatively somebody is paying for fiber, but I'm just getting less access.
The market, which is great, is also imperfect. And so it's not providing the same choices to everybody everywhere. We're not seeing the competition, we're not seeing the choices, and we're not seeing, therefore, the competitiveness, let's say, in the prices.
You know, if you have to go to a different part of the city in order to deliver or receive digital information or digital files, you know, obviously that adds to the cost of living, the cost of doing business. I mean, it puts me at a competitive disadvantage.
The truth is, we have to look at the future. We have to anticipate. When we're reconstructing a road and it's wide open, the incremental cost to add fiber infrastructure, be it conduit or be it conduit and fiber cable, is relatively small. That makes it more cost effective for somebody in the private sector to potentially lease those strands rather than build their own, because what we're trying to really develop here in the end is a partnership between the community and the city and private sector providers.
A solution is we need to treat the internet as a public utility. Since we are dealing with a lot of private providers and you know, just corporations and private companies that are the providers, I would love for them to adopt some kind of equity understanding and equity lens. Our elected officials need to be really at the forefront and advocating for us because they're making those initial deals of how providers come into cities and come into regions. The free market will not provide for everyone equally. It will provide for the person who has the most money.
That's where cities get to play a role in this imperfect market, is to try to fill in the gaps.
It behooves us all to sort of bring this up to a standard, everybody working for the same standard.
Thank you also to the three Film Northeast who agreed to participate.
Any questions or comments for the group? Yeah, go ahead.
Did you try to map, even rough map, kind of what the cost differentials are around the city?
We sure did. If anyone wants specifically.
I spent a lot of time on it, and it's like the companies don't want us to know, it seems like. We spent many hours on it, and it was really hard to pin down even like a estimate.
If you have roughly like a specific address, the price you pay there, there's no really comprehensive map of like this neighborhood's this much, this neighborhood's that much.
All right, one or two other, Diane?
You know, I would suggest that you share that with state legislators because there is a telephone assistance program that could be expanded for like a federal lifeline program has for low-income people. It doesn't help the difference in the speed access, but it would help with the affordability. And what we hear, because we have a grant program for infrastructure in rural areas, and the rural legislators are more on board with understanding the need for it than the urban legislators. They think everybody has it, we're good to go. So I would share it with them so that statewide issue, not just a rural issue.
Thanks.
I have one piece of information. Even though I work for the city of St. Louis Park, I happen to be stationed in Minneapolis, so that's where I live. So from a cost perspective, I can tell you that I was one of the incumbent providers paying about $125 a month, and I switched to fiber to the home with U.S. Internet, and the price went to $70, and that was for 10 times the speed on the internet increase for that much less. So that's not comprehensive, because you're right, Caitlin, it's hard to find this data.